If I remember correctly, value, as in business value, is determined by two fundamental factors. One is profitability and growth. This is chapter 12 for Charlotte, right? Section 3. The name of the section is called Global Expansion. And they say, and profitability and growth. In other words, the basic question is, how is global expansion affecting profitability and growth? In other words, how it affects value. So the question is how global expansion can increase or improve business value. And you got 4 short answers. First, let's try 1. The first big one is expanding the market, or market expansion. You expand the market, and market expansion can definitely improve growth. Before, you were selling those BMWs in Europe, now you sell them in China too. So, you just sell more, increases the quantity of sales. Now, this strategy works well if there is little, or we call it better, weak, indigenous, that's gonna be a nasty word for all of you. Somebody open dictionary for indigenous. Indigenous competition. Indigenous means local, belonging to the native country. Indigenous competition. You got it? Whoops.
Bodenständig.
Okay, you guys understand it? So, if you have weak indigenous competition, means you're not going to feel a lot of competition, you can do very well. That's why, for example, when German cars try to compete in France, you got a vicious competition there. You got an equally vicious competition in Japan. But the competition in China is not yet very strong, okay? The competition in Bulgaria is non-existent. We don't have any car manufacturers, okay? So, you can do much better in a market where you have little or no local competition. That's a major advantage. Okay, the other main idea with market expansion, and I'll be talking a lot more, yeah, let's put it in red, is this is a fundamental idea in strategic management called core competence. Now, you guys, many of you study strategic management, right? Have you studied already core competence in your strategic management course? So, core competence is the source of competitive advantage. It gives you the competitive advantage. And these are skills within the firms that cannot be easily replicated or imitated by competitors. In other words, you got something special and the competition can't replicate it, can't come up easily with something very similar so that they can compete on that thing. So core competence is a special skill or sometimes a special technology which cannot be easily replicated by competitors. And it represents the foundation of competitive advantage. Let's try and do, this is a fundamental concept of strategic management called competitive advantage. Is advantage which a business has and provides advantage relative to other businesses which they don't have. So you got something which brings value to the customer and other competitors don't have it. It's a competitive advantage. It allows you to compete better with the competition. And core competencies are the foundation of competitive advantage. The core competence of Japanese, or actually of German automakers, is good engineering. The core competence of Japanese manufacturers is efficient manufacturing and high quality of manufacturing. And the core competence, at least for Toyota, claims to be reliability. They provide very reliable, or at least that's what the customers believe. That's how they market themselves. That's how they advertise and sell, that you can buy a Toyota and it will run for 100,000 kilometers without any breakdown or any problems. So this is a core competence. And if you have a clear core competence which is not available in the local country, in the indigenous market. So, where could be these core competences? These core competences could be in a number of areas. It could be in production. That's exactly what I was explaining when I was talking about the competitive advantage of Toyota. Toyota has special advantages in production. Next one, R&D. Usually German auto engineering is outstanding and Japanese are very good in R&D. Another one will be, let's see, marketing. Yeah, marketing, why not? One of the best advertisers in the world relative for their products is Apple. Apple has had phenomenal marketing campaign to the point where consumers perceive their first MacBooks and before the iMacs and later on the iPhones as totally and completely different products from the rest of the world. They advertised early on as think differently. Okay, so everything about the Mac was different, was innovative. So they were, of course they had good engineering, no question about it, but they were pretty good on marketing. Now when it comes to marketing and advertising, in terms of automakers, the most innovative and the best is considered BMW. BMW does a whole lot better marketing than Audi or Mercedes. I mean, others may disagree. And they try to compensate and to maintain their brand name with heavy marketing. They're very strong in marketing. Now, unfortunately, BMW has gone to the point where the company is driven by marketing guys and not by engineering guys, and that's a sure way of a company in decline. When the marketing guys start to dictate to the engineers what to do, things are going bad. Of course, it can take 10 or 20 years for the marketing guys to ruin the company. That's a whole different story. But some companies are pretty damn good at marketing. You can have HR. You can have human resources, which are very special. They may be more motivated, they may be better educated and whatnot. When it comes to banking, finance, in the world of finance, the best people are collected in one firm. In the whole world has all the best people. Name, bonuses. Which financial institution collects the best of the best from the very best in the world of finance? Which one? Deutsche Bank? No, no, no. Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is able to recruit the best of the best to attract them. Everybody in finance knows that Goldman Sachs is #1. It pays the best, and you want to be there. And they're able to select from hundreds, usually 100 applicants for one job. They got a lot of jobs, but they got even more applicants. And let's see if I'm missing it. Oh yeah, logistics. Logistics was early on the competitive advantage of Dell. Dell would assemble, they'll have the CPUs and the hard drives and everything else. You will put in on the website, I want this kind of computer with this kind of CPU, with this kind of memory, with this kind of hard drive, in this kind of case and all the other specifications, with this kind of CD-ROM or DVD-ROM or DVD writer or whatever the specification is. They'll calculate for you the price, and then they'll have, you put in your address, you make a payment with a credit card, they'll assemble it within 2 to 4 days. They can even calculate average days to assembly, and usually you'll have it at home within 1 week. So they were doing an outstanding job when it came to logistics. So Dell has had an extraordinary competitive advantage in terms of logistics. And some of them will just have good, #6, general management. General management. Now, when it comes to banking, I was already explaining before that banking finance is very, very information intensive. So, another area that could provide tremendous competitive advantages, better, more advanced, more sophisticated IT, more sophisticated information systems or information technology. Sometimes in business they like to use the special word. Let's write it out. Business students will usually have a course. It's called MIS, Management Information Systems, which is the same as IS information systems, the same as information technology. In other words, this is information technology used for decision-making purposes by management. All right, girls? Done? All right. So, these are some of the core competences. And the key idea is that you have a core competence and you're able to transfer the competence. So, if you can transfer the competence to the local market, you can benefit tremendously. Now, coming to think about it, here's another one, which is a special competence of McDonald's, and it's called operations, the ability to make quickly and efficiently a hamburger or this or whatever the product is. So, operations. Some people, meaning some businesses, are very good at operations, and running efficient operations is very important. In this particular case, it's production operations with respect to Toyota. Here could be service operations with, let's say, McDonald's. Okay. So, all of these core competencies will basically mean that whatever your business is, you have what is called or known as a business model. Business model is how you run your business, what your product is, how we deliver it to the customer, and everything else. And it's about basically replicating your business model in the native country. So, the basic idea is when you, as a German, come to Bulgaria and you walk into a metro, which is a German company, it is just like the metro in Germany. It's not in any way different. And if you get to work there, you're going to be working just like you're working in a German company. Basically, whatever the business model is, it is replicated in the local country. So, the success of this particular strategy depends on the ability to replicate the business model, and it depends on whether you can, and the replication of the business model depends on whether you can transfer your core competence. If you can transfer your core competence and recreate the business model, you are likely going to be successful. Okay? That's number one. Number two. So, number one is market expansion. Number two is location economies. And location economies are fairly straightforward. These are the economies that arise from moving a specific operation at the most efficient or the most optimal place in the world. So, in the US, they will move, let's say, the scanning, so you go through the scan in the medical industry, and they ship the scan to India, the scan gets deciphered, analyzed, and you ship back the results to the United States. So, these are simple location economies. When you're looking at these videos, the case study in Jamaica, when they create the local center with the jobs and everything else, they exploit location economies by using the cheap labor over there. Sometimes you may have location economies by transferring some stuff into a more expensive country where they're good at engineering or design or something else. But the basic idea of location economies is each particular function or operation is moved to the optimal place where it's going to be relatively cheaper. And relatively cheaper does not mean, don't think that relatively cheaper would mean that you will move some of the highly skilled work in a cheap country. Sometimes, for example, in technology, labor is very expensive in Silicon Valley. But you don't want to move the stuff, the research and development out of Silicon Valley. You get a lot of benefits of being in Silicon Valley, working there, researching there, and running part of your, at least the R&D there. You get a lot of benefits by sometimes running in a more expensive area or, let's say, country like Singapore. It's not, it's an illusion that you always benefit by moving it to a cheaper country. The answer is no, not really. Okay, if that was the case, all the research and development of BMW would be already in Poland or in Slovakia, but it's not. It's still in Munich, right? Same thing for Mercedes, same thing for Audi, okay? So you transfer only some of those functions to other places. Let's see. The location economies will depend on trade barriers. You don't want to have trade barriers. So if you want to be an American business and you want to move some of your production to Mexico, you want to remove trade barriers. So you create yourself a NAFTA. And NAFTA is a way to remove or at least reduce trade barriers. And the other one, which could be a problem, are transportation costs. A country which is far away from the market is usually not optimal. You cannot gain the location economies by moving production over there because the transportation cost will offset, will eat the profit. Example for most productions which are not viable will be outsourcing them or moving them to New Zealand. Moving stuff to New Zealand is far away. And can you imagine moving then stuff from New Zealand back to Germany? It's almost impossible, okay? It's way too far away. You want to move it close, like the Czech Republic, like Slovakia or Slovenia. You want to move it close in order to pick up some of these location economies. If it's too far away, the transportation cost could be too much, okay? And the trade barrier could be a problem down the road. So, you can extract the location economies, but you have to be aware and careful about these two. Let's see what else. Creating global. Yeah, they call this, it's a general concept of a global web. So, global web represents the different locations of different value-creating activities around the world. So, example, you're a car manufacturer, you will have the glass window on one place, you'll have the tires in another place, you're going to have the manufacturing plant in another place, you're going to have the research and development in another place, you're going to have the marketing possibly in a different place, and then the carburetor is going to be in a different place, the fuel injection is going to be in a different place, all the different pieces, the rims, all the other stuff is going to be in different places. Essentially, that's what happens in the US car manufacturing. You may be producing one car and you may source from 100 different suppliers, some in the US, some in the States, in the same state, some in other states, but many of them will be in foreign countries and they'll be delivering to you different parts. So the global web represents the collection of all suppliers from around the world that you need or use to put a product together, okay? Global web can also include, for example, say, hey, we need, for example, toys for Christmas, and you want this, and this type of toy. You design them over here, you ship the designs to Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, they will find out which company in China can manufacture them. They will send the specifications, they will make the order, they will arrange for the shipment from China to go directly to Sweden or Norway, okay? And this will be a simple example of the global web of doing things around the world, okay? So that's the idea of the global web. Number three will be experience. Experience effects. And you got a fundamental concept of experience curve. Experience curve simply tells you or shows you how you get more efficient and you're able to produce with higher quality and lower cost as you gain more experience. Example will be a professor with 20 years of teaching experience in accounting can do a lot better course than a professor with 2 years of experience, because he already knows which are the problems, which are the difficulty, what works, what doesn't work, and how to address certain issues. It's a very simple and very easy curve. It's all common sense. People really understand it. On the one side, you have quantity, as in output, and on the other side, you have cost, as in unit cost. Early on, the first units are very, very expensive. And as you get to learn, you do better and better and better. And as you gain a significant amount of experience, the cost begins to run relatively steady. So, this is the experience curve. A different type of experience curve is that as you get to produce more and more and more, this is quantity, and this is quality, you get to increase significantly the quality. Again, an auto worker with 20 years of experience will be doing a lot higher quality than someone with 1 year of experience. And of course, the same applies with an engineer. An old engineer with 25 years of engineering experience, let's say engine design, is going to do a whole lot better than a young engineer with barely 1 year of experience. Okay, so these are obvious things. So experience effects. One, the foundational is the experience curve. As you move more and more, you will improve labor productivity. Okay, there is a direct relationship, one-to-one relationship between unit cost and productivity. Better productivity means lower cost. Lower productivity means higher cost. So a different way to draw this graph is to draw it like this. Here is quantity, and this is productivity. And productivity increases as you increase, meaning as you go up. And we like to call this the learning curve. The learning curve. So with moving along the learning curve, you improve your productivity and you improve your quality. That's fairly straightforward. And you get more increase in productivity and quality if it is more complex. If something is very complicated, you can break it down into small tasks and get tremendous gains. If it's not complicated, you cannot really learn a lot. So complexity allows for experience and learning effects. Complexity is very important. And the more complex and complicated it is, the better you can learn and improve your productivity and your quality. Next part over here is called Economies of Scale. And Economies of Scale is simply the general lowering of costs because you have an increased higher production. So we're talking about two different things here. Here in the learning effects, For example, Mercedes has an advantage because it's been manufacturing cars for 100 years now. It's not like some Czech company that's been making cars for 5 or 10 or 20 years. I mean, these guys have been doing cars for 100 years. They know what they're doing. So they have a lot of knowledge, and economies of scale is you increase your operation. You double the production, the cost of unit will fall. And you get economies of scale by manufacturing more to sell abroad. I even think when I was walking this morning about 4 hours ago, I saw one of the other teachers was teaching some of you about economies of scope. Was anyone on the lecture? You did? Who else did this morning in economies of scope? Only you? Nobody else? Economies of scope. Economies of scope means the following. If I specialize in financial economics, I could easily step a little aside and teach finance. Or I could easily step aside and teach economics. Okay, I'm equally comfortable. For Mercedes, if they've been doing military trucks, let's say for the First World War and especially for World War II, they've been doing military trucks. These guys can now do consumer trucks, or they can do SUVs. Yeah?
I'm not sure if it's true, but isn't scope the one where you literally take the waste you get when you produce a product, and then with the waste you normally throw away?
No. Nothing to do with the waste. Okay, no. So you're asking if economies of scope is when you take the waste and then use it for something else?
We have it in Austria when we produce
Well,
milk.
yeah.
And there's something
Left.
you know, and then they put just flavor in it.
Yeah, and they sell
it again. And this is economies of scope because they use literally the waste they normally used to throw away to make more money.
No, that's a different story. That's increasing the efficiency. Economies of scope is, first, Apple started with a computer called the iMac. And the iMac gave them a good advantage of they began to use the mouse, okay? So they use a mouse, they use the screen, they use everything that you're familiar with. And from the iMac, later on, they already have these skills, they made let's just call it the Mac book. They focused on graphics design. They had a better graphics processor. Later on, it was also a data processor. And they transferred those skills from one product, like the iMac, to put it in the MacBook. And then, using their knowledge, their skills of the MacBook, they used all of these, plus research, development, engineering, and creativity to do the iPhone, okay? So that's economies of scope. Economies of scope is, for example, you got Suzuki, and they're good at regular motorcycles. Well, how much is of a step from a regular motorcycle to make a scooter? And the answer is, not much. You need the same engineering skills, you use the same engine, use the same clutch, use the same braking system. You just change a little bit the body. Okay, question?
So you say it's all about knowledge and learning the skills.
Knowledge and learning the skills, but not only. You can, here in the iMac and the MacBook, you can reuse the processor, the chip, okay, the CPU. Here, you can reuse entirely the engine. You just take the old engine and throw it in here, okay? So, BMW has these nice 7 Series cars. You already have the engine, you just throw it into an SUV, okay? The X3, the X5, right? So, yes, you use some of the skills, but you just use the old product. You don't need to create and generate a brand new engine for the X5. No need. You already got one working well. It's proven, it's tested, okay?
But where would you see the border between economies of scope and economies of learning?
In economies of, well, economy, the learning is a general process which is associated when you design motorcycle Honda for 50 years, okay? You are getting better and better at designing motorcycles, okay?
But wouldn't it be then literally the same? Because if you're an automobile producer, you just focus on the motor and throw the motor in every car. So when you get better, like economies of learning.
Yes, this is economies of learning, right?
But I don't see the difference between learning.
Well, the
and
difference,
scope then.
the difference is that in the scope, you apply this for different products. Now you apply it for the iPhone. Well, having been successful on the iPhone, you apply it for the iPad, okay? And now, seeing that the iPad is extraordinarily successful, you can design a product in between the mini iPad. So the idea of the scope is that you begin to use these skills in a neighboring environment. Let's provide a more different example that will give you the idea. Yamaha, you know, they produce these racing motorcycles. Well, they use them for a totally different product. A speedboat, okay? You know speedboat? Well, speedboat will have a Yamaha motorcycle engine. And the engine is going to be the same, okay? But you design a completely different product. It's not a motorcycle. It's a boat. It's a speedboat. So this is where you get the scope. And you can get to produce twice more engines, but everything else for the boat you got to produce separately from the motorcycles.
So it normally comes together.
Yes, right. So the scope, they all come together. That's the idea. It all gets down to designing a better engine, designing a better clutch, designing more efficient this, designing more efficient that. And then if you're producing big trucks and you're a Mercedes, you might as well produce buses, right? I mean, how much more difficult? You're still going to use the same engine, the same clutch, the same braking system, the same tires, the same everything. You just put a new and different body, okay? And that's what economies of scope is about. And you can gain tremendously and generate economies of scope. And here they got another little section about strategic significance. Yes. This is a section here. Strategic significance. It's very important if you're introducing a new product and you are able to globalize. Globalization will allow you to sell 3 times or 10 times higher volumes. If you're able to globalize, you can move more quickly through the experience curve, through the learning curve, and enjoy better economies of scale and scope. So if, for example, your competitors stay local, they have only that much quantity, they're so productive. If you're able to globalize, you can have significantly higher productivity, and you can have significantly better cost advantage. Cost advantage here if you're local, and cost advantage here. So there is a tremendous strategic advantage to gain from the economies of scale and from the experience curve, or we also call it, as you said, the learning curve, and possibly economies of scope by internationalizing, because you can more rapidly lower your cost by more rapidly, they call it ramping up production quantities. So you can gain tremendous advantage relative to those who stay at home, simply because you're going to be able to compete better at home by enjoying the economies of scale in the learning curve and the lower cost. Okay, so that's a tremendous advantage. And number 4, I would think, let's see if I got anything else before I move to number 4. Yes, number 4, last subsection is subsidiary skills, leveraging subsidiary skills. Well, that's fairly straightforward. It is not always the case that when you move to a foreign country and have a foreign operation, that you will only teach the foreigners of how to do things. When you go in a foreign country, you may actually learn something from foreigners. Actually, in the subsidiary, you can get a significant amount of learning, which learning you can transfer to back home. So, if you move to China for some reason, or Austria or Bulgaria, you may learn something from China or from Austria or from Bulgaria that you can bring back home to benefit. Again, exposing yourself as a business to many different countries, it is likely that you may learn somewhere something valuable that you can bring and apply home for a better advantage and better competitiveness at home. So globalizing can provide this feedback effect where you may teach the foreigners something, but the foreigners may possibly teach you something back in return. And we got a little summary over here. Yes, it can increase profits, it can increase profitability, it can increase profits growth, expansion can increase overall value. Let's see something. And the last piece is that if you have a foreign strategy, your local strategy may be because you will be enjoying lower unit costs, that you compete in your home market on price, because in your home market you can produce cheaply because you produce and sell for 20 different countries, because you have a larger scale of operation. So it is not always, you have to be very careful, it is not always optimal to keep the highest price possible to get the highest profit per unit. We call it profit margin. It may be more profitable that you keep the price very low, expand rapidly globally, and you're going to be profiting more from the growth as opposed to the profitability. The example for this, to finish, will be the iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy. The iPhone strategy is maintain price high, maintain high price, and try to expand as much as you can. In the Galaxy is maintain the price low and rapid growth and expansion. To the point where iPhone started almost a year and a half, 2 years earlier than Galaxy, and now you got more Galaxies sold around the world. The strategy was based on relatively low price, and again, because Galaxy is a low price, they still make a profit, but they make a lower profit, which they make up on the higher volumes. If you sell twice more Galaxies, you will compensate for the lower profit per unit. Question?
Is it then skimming pricing, what you call in?
No, skimming pricing is completely different. It's a marketing strategy which you see all the time with airlines, where in skimming you try to get as high price as possible, whatever you can possibly get out of the customers, okay? So skimming is what iPhone is trying. They try to keep as high price as possible. And skimming is also part of price discrimination, where you charge different people different. If, for example, you're traveling, if you're staying over the weekends, you're going to get a lower price. But if you're staying only during the weekend, coming back before the weekend, then you're a business traveler. So you're your business travel, they try to charge you 50% more. If you're individual and you're flexible, they charge you less. So that's kind of like what skimming means. Trying to get the different price for different people. Here, the Galaxy strategy is just keep the price low, just keep it better and more competitive than the iPhone. That's how I decided to buy my own. I did my own research and said, oh, the screen is a little better, battery runs fine, the applications are open source, the screen is a little better, is a little nicer, and get this, it doesn't have any major disadvantages relative to the iPhone, and it's a little cheaper. So I went for the Galaxy. And now, 2 years later, I'm quite happy with it. I think I did a very good move. Not only I saved money, I got significantly better product. Okay? So, Galaxy strategies, keep the price low and keep the quantity and the volume quantity high and make up profits on the growth as opposed to the profitability. So, iPhone maintains high profitability and low growth. The Galaxy strategies maintain low profitability and high growth rate. You have to be careful with the first in international strategy. All right, good enough for today? Okay, have fun, enjoy the big holiday.